great to see you all once again. Now today we're going to go back and look at one of the back to basic designs. So we looked at the crescent shape and I'm going to do it again, revisiting the basic instruction that I gave you in previous videos. And if you haven't already seen those videos, then I'll link them here in the cards. So welcome back, my name is Sharon and you'll find lots of tutorials on my channel, all to do with flower arranging, basic flowering, all the way through to something a bit different. And I've pretty much specialised in back to basic floral design. If you're new and you're learning floral design, then pop back and have a look at the back to basics series. Then we did a back to basics revisited, and now we're looking again at those basic instructions that we looked at right at the very beginning. Now I've got a tall container this week. It's a glass black, quite a dominant coloured container, and fairly narrow gap on the top. So finding a container that sits on the top is probably quite a challenging exercise to do when you're learning flower arranging at the very beginning. What you don't want to do is to get yourself some floral foam and just to wedge it in the top of the container. What will happen in that incident is the water will just drain away into the bottom of the vase, and it means that your foam will dehydrate quite quickly. You could wrap that in some cellophane or even the packaging that your flowers comes in and then squeeze it into the top of the container. But the best method is to find a plastic base, something that you might already have at home, something that you could reuse in different types of floral designs. But I find that this size plastic dish, this is part of a container where there's a base to go with it. But I've kept them, I don't use them with the base attached to them. I find they work really well in tall, narrow containers. And you'll see that that sits quite comfortably there on the top. So my crescent shape is part of a circle. So it's almost half of the size of a circle. And I'm going to come downwards towards the base of my design. So if you think about it, the majority of your flowers and lots of the foliage material is going to come from the side. So for me, the widest part of my floral foam needs to be at the side because that's the piece that's going to take the most material. One of the difficulties of this type of design is if you have too much floral foam, it's really hard to cover it, and then you make the center part of your design really heavy. Lots of foliage needs to be added, and then you almost lose the crescent shape that you've tried really hard to create. So avoid using too much floral foam. So at this stage, I'm just going to take off the top section. That's going to really aid me when I come to make the design as we go along. And another thing to consider, at the moment my plastic dish is just sitting on the top there. But what you've also got to consider is when you tape in your floral foam, so when you attach it to your plastic base, you want to bring it from front to back. Again, lots of your materials are coming in from the side. So if you take your floral tape over the top, you're blocking quite a large section here on the side where your flower material is going to go. So if it's your first time doing a crescent, don't have a huge piece of floral foam and don't tape it from side to side because that's going to restrict the amount of materials you can put in from the side. Now I'm going to tape the foam to my plastic container, and I am using green floral foam, and mainly because it's a back to basic tutorial and I know that everybody can get hold of floral foam from their local florist or craft shop, or you can even buy it online. That's nice and secure on there, remembering that that's the front to back position when I'm working. And you could of course taken the tape onto the glass section as well, but I'm going to show you a method that we haven't, I don't think, looked at before, and I'm going to use the Oasis Floral Fix. So Oasis is a brand name. The tape is almost like a plasticine. It's quite sticky, and what I'm going to do with this is attach it to the sides of my container. And when you do this, you really need to have a clean, dry vase. If it's just been washed, like mine has, then the floral fix doesn't stick quite as well to the container. So don't do what I've done and wash your container just before you're about to do a video, because I'm going to have a bit of difficulty getting that to stick. And what you don't want to do is get any dust or debris on that plasticine, because it'll stick and it'll stop it adhering to your container. So once that's done, remembering that my tape is front to back, I've now got a really secure attachment there, and I haven't got any ugly tape or too many mechanics that I have to consider hiding as the design goes together. Okay, so let's get creative with, now it's time to get a bit creative. Time for us to get creative. And first of all, I'm going to put in my outline shape. Now for the length of my design, we're almost going to go a similar size to the height of my container. I've chosen materials this week that have a natural bend in them, and we're going to start with some of the eucalyptus. This is Eucalyptus parvifolia, and you can see that without me trying too hard, I've already got a lovely, elegant curve to the material. And what I will do is I will get myself 2 pieces, so for either side of my arrangement, 2 pieces that are fairly similar in length. If I cut them before I start, then I know that each side of my arrangement is going to be fairly similar in length. If we have a look at this one here, it's a lot fuller than this piece, so I'm just going to thin it out. Otherwise, again, before I start, I'm going to end up having one side of my arrangement visually more heavy than the other. So we're looking for 2 pieces that are fairly similar. And I'm using 2 pieces of foliage that are the same variety. So we have 2 pieces of eucalyptus, but you could use something that was different. But a traditional design like this looks better when the sides are fairly similar. With your foliage outline, you need to start working towards the back of the container. So you'll see in the floral foam here, I'm towards the back third of the floral block. What I don't want to do is start too far forward, because that will mean that I won't be able to bring my flowers. There won't be enough room for the flower material to come towards the back. And it's always important with a tall container, and I say it in each video, you have to get the weight of the arrangement right. Otherwise, the whole design is going to tip forward. So what I'm doing with the spare shorter pieces of eucalyptus, I'm bringing them towards the back so that I'm bringing the colour of the eucalyptus towards the back, and I'm also making sure that that floral foam is covered. So for a moment you're looking at the front and I'm looking at the back, and we'll just get some foliage in there right at the very start so you can see exactly where I'm aiming at. So you're looking at the front, this now becomes the back, and I've still placed material in quite long at the back, roughly about half of this length here, and that's going to aid that depth and that 3D effect that I talk about in every video, and it's going to make your container far more stable and stop it tipping forward and falling over. If I now move towards the front and use some of the smaller pieces, towards the front, I'm now going to get the depth that I need to create that 3-dimensional shape. So we've done the widths and we've done the depth from back to front. What I haven't done yet is gauged the height of my arrangement. And it's quite important with a raised container like this. You'll see that I've angled the materials downwards because I need to cover that floral tape, the plastic container, and of course the floral foam. So I'm aiming to drape it forward over that plastic container. And this week's video, I've got 2 different types of eucalyptus to use. And if you can't get hold of eucalyptus, then look for materials that are in your garden that have a natural bend, or go to your florist and ask them to choose you something that's quite pliable so that you can manipulate it into shape. Soft ruscus is very good from a florist. Any of the eucalyptuses like I've got here now, Pittosporum from your garden, privet, euonymus is really good as well. So, you know, familiarise yourself with what you can get hold of and its attributes and how well it can be used in the different types of arrangements. And the height of my arrangement is going to be roughly half of the size of my container. And I've got a slightly different type of eucalyptus, so a bigger leaf. And if I had more of the softer eucalyptus, the parvifolia, then I could have used that up towards the top as well, but I didn't have enough to start off with. So I'm going to add in now this larger, stronger leaf. It's going to bring me a contrast in texture and a contrast in shape. And rather than it being just in the center there, which almost splits the design in half, it makes me have the longer section and then a top section. I'm going to put some pieces on the edges as well, so that that colour and texture is brought all the way through to the edge. They're quite dominant, the leaf is quite large, so what I need to do is just play with them a little bit so that the position of them is angled down more than sticking out very artificially on either side. So that's the two types of eucalyptus. What I forgot to mention was I also have what I call Senecio, but I think it's now known as Brachyglottis. Another one that will grow in the garden. This has come from the Irish Green Guys, which are a company over in Ireland. And it's a beautiful textured leaf, pale grey on the underside and then a darker grey, almost a fluffy texture. But something that will grow quite easily here in the UK. One that copes really well with the drought, so it's probably in lots of different parts of Europe as well. Beautiful grey leafed foliage. And I'm going to start, so I'm looking at the back at the moment. I'm going to start bringing that from the back through towards the front so that we have that lovely texture. And this also has a benefit, it's quite a long foliage. It does curve very well as well. So if I wanted to use it on the outer edge, I could. But for now, I'm just using it towards the centre. It's really a real tactile leaf, almost a velvety appearance. And you can also use them as individual leaves. And I use these a lot in the wedding season, in buttonholes, corsages. They last really well and they look fantastic in little small designs, as well as big designs, just like this. We're doing a fairly good job at the moment of covering that plastic base underneath. And don't forget, I do say this quite often as well in a video, the camera angle is slightly different from the angle that I'm looking at it from. So I do try to make sure that my mechanics are completely covered. But you're looking slightly up from the position I am. So I'm hoping that you can't see all my plastic tape and dish underneath. There we are. So that's the outline shape sorted. So if we think about following a line from the top here down to the end, that's my crescent shape starting to take place. And the crescent is equal on both sides. So it's a symmetrical design. And generally they're front facing. They work wonderful in reception desks or on an altar or on a raised stand. If you were going to do a semi-crescent, then we would have this side shorter and it would be longer on one side. So this is a crescent shape arrangement. Also very popular in wedding bouquet styles and shapes, and something that you can make in a much larger version for a church maybe, with some candles in the centre. That works really well and is very attractive. So quite a versatile arrangement once you learn it, but not the easiest to master. Now my flower choice is quite simple this week. They're not supermarket flowers this week. Now I have Clematis, and at the moment in the UK you won't get this in the garden, but it will come in the summer months. A wonderful purple tone, and we can pretty much buy this through the flower auctions as florists all year round. Another fantastic item that we use in wedding work. And I've picked a Gerbera. You can more often than not get Gerberas in the supermarket. You can of course order both of these from your local florist shop. If you can't get Clematis, a spray carnation or a lisianthus will work just as well. But again, you need to try and pick something that has a bit of natural movement in it. If you think of a rose, it's very straight, stands up almost like a soldier. That's the type of flower to avoid in this type of arrangement. You want something that has that softness and the versatility to drape down. And what you can do again, like the foliage, if we get 2 pieces to start with, lay them alongside one another, cut them so that they're a similar length. The length on the arrangement is going to be fairly similar on both sides. Still arranging into the side of the floral foam. My foliage is the outline, so I don't need to come any longer with my material. And again, if you need to slightly move the flower heads so that the shape of the flower is better, then that's okay to do. So you can see that purple colour now is all the way to the edge of the arrangement. I need now to link it through the middle so the colour makes your eye travel, which is what we call rhythm and repetition, from one side. Clematis is, in this design, is what we would call the secondary flower, and my most dominant flower, or the focal flower, is going to be the Gerbera. So that will take centre stage in the centre, and I've only got these 2 different flower types. You can, of course, add other flowers in as well. You could bring roses towards the top section if you wanted to, because you can get away with them being straighter in the middle section. You'll find it quite difficult to get the shape with just using roses. It will end up looking quite severe and unnatural. Now I'm going to bring the colour in through to the top, and you'll see that I've cut this clematis into 2 parts. So I still have this smaller piece here that I can use. And the foliage on the clematis is quite attractive, stays for quite a long time. It's a good lasting foliage, so I can reuse that back into the arrangement as well. Because this design is aimed at beginners, I've only used 2 different flower types. I think when you're learning, 2 or 3 flower types is ideal. Trying to add more flower types can sometimes be confusing when you're trying to learn. So for the moment, we're just using the clematis, which has given me that fabulous crescent shape that's really reinforced that shape from one side to the other. And if I keep turning it around, not a great deal of flower content towards the back, but I have got the foliage there, which helps me give weight to the floral design. Now I've created the outline and I've put that softer material in as well. I'm going to start with the larger flower heads, and this is the really pretty cerise sort of pink Gerbera. And the reason I picked the black vase was because I have a black centre to my Gerbera. So again, I have a link from the top part of the arrangement down to the bottom. That's not always achievable, and it's something that you do really learn with experience. It's nice if you have a link between the top and the bottom, but when you're learning, it's not something to get too worried about. Start now with using the Gerbera as a centre point. So this is the middle of my floral design, and then what I need to do with the Gerbera is to bring them towards the outside and bring that link of colour from one side to the other. Now, the Gerbera stem can be wired. You could run a wire externally down the stem of the Gerbera, but I always think that looks quite artificial and ugly, I suppose. But what we need to think about and you need to concentrate on is trying to hide the stem in amongst the foliage. The clematis gives me my outside flower, my longer flower. It's a soft, small head. So now I'm going to bring the Gerbera from one side to the other. And what I'm not going to do is face the head forward. We're going to see it from its side profile. If we look at it from the front, you're going to get that really rigid line coming through the middle, which looks a little unnatural. But as we make our way towards the centre, then I will start bending them forward. But the focal point is the top of my arrangement. It's where the Gerbera is up here. So what I don't want to do is have those really visual full stops, bringing your eye up towards the middle. Now we've got 3 in so far. Now hopefully you can see why it was important for me to have a large amount of foam on the side because my flowers, I'm just going to go a bit shorter with that one, because the majority of my flowers are coming in from the side. And if we had a very narrow piece of foam, then I would already have run out of space to put my flowers into. Now, in a moment, I'm just going to turn it around for you to see how it's coming together. And if we feel when the design is done that the stems of the gerbera are very visible, they're almost going to be very severe and very straight. So when I explained to you in the beginning to avoid the roses because they can be very prominent, what I've got to try and avoid is that same problem with the gerbera. So when I get towards the end, I'll stand back and have a look at it again and see if I need to add another soft bit of eucalyptus just to hide that very straight severe stem that you can see from the gerbera. But you'll see I'm stepping them up towards that focal point in the middle there, and then your eye will travel back down on the opposite side. And while we're talking about the floral foam, it's important really before you start a design to think about the types of flowers that you're putting into an arrangement. So if your stems are very thick and very large, then you might need to consider putting in a bigger piece of floral foam. If, like the arrangement I'm doing today, the flowers are quite thin, nothing too large, nothing too chunky going into the floral foam. So it means that I don't have to have anything too big to arrange my flowers into. There's nothing worse when you're learning to do arranging, that when you are almost 3/4 through your floral design and you go to put in extra flower and the foam crumbles away and disintegrates in front of your eyes. It's really quite soul destroying when you're learning. So right at the very beginning, when you're planning and you're thinking of the design that you're going to do, think whether or not you need to have a large piece of foam or you need to have something a bit smaller. There, so we're almost done. We're linking the colour from one side to the other. They don't have to be perfectly matching on either side. And what I will also do is bring some of the colour in through to the back as well. But how are we doing so far? I think that's quite nice. Now there's my final flower in the centre there. So you can see gorgeous sweep of that vibrant pink from one side to the other. That's accompanied with the small little clematis, so my secondary flower. And then a gerbera towards the back. And as a commercial florist, it's really important for us to bring flowers towards the back because it makes the design look more professional. But for you at home, if you haven't got enough flower material to come through towards the back, just make sure that the foam is covered with foliage because that will stop it dehydrating. Now I'm quite happy with how that has been achieved and how that design has come together. Quite often use this pistache foliage at the end of floral designs to fill in any gaps. Also brings a different texture and a different colour into the arrangement. And because you're a bit further away from the camera, you might not be able to see that I have just a few gaps and I can see some floral foam visible in the design. Hopefully that's given you an insight into how to create the crescent shape. Don't forget, if you've really been enjoying the tutorials, to subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell to be notified every time I upload a new instructional video. And please like and comment in the box below. Share it with your friends. Tell as many people as you can. And hopefully they'll join us for another video very soon. So thanks for watching and goodbye for now.